introduce yourself.
All right, sounds good. Good
As
afternoon,
well.
everyone. My name is Brady Sandahl. I have the pleasure of being with Keller Williams Luxury here in Palm Springs, California. And I think, like most of you, if not all of you, I am also in production, which means I wake up every day looking for an owner who should be a seller and a shopper who could be a buyer. And today, we're going to talk about how we incorporated the Ritz Carlton Gold Standards into our customer service platform. So ultimately, by the end of our conversation today, you will understand how you can grasp the importance in that the level of service that you choose to offer will determine the level of income that you make. Number two, how you can determine the core values that you want to represent each day, every day, either by those of you who help people buy or sell real estate or those of you who support those who do. And thirdly, give you an idea of how you can surprise and delight your customers throughout the entire, what we call interaction, not transaction, but the interaction. So we'll get started. Irene, I think you know this statistic because you know it's quite concerning that for those of us in production, when we finish a transaction, there is about a 10% chance that that buyer or seller will not return to us. And that's because we got the job done, meaning we sold their house and they've moved. They just moved out of Toronto, they've moved somewhere else and they're not going back. There's about 14% that may not return because they've maybe become a real estate licensee, they've married a real estate licensee, their best friend, their sister, their daughter, their son, or maybe a competitor adopted them. The number that's most concerning is that 67% of your customers may not return because the service was indifferent. Let me explain. You got the job done, you got the property sold, you got the buyer in the house, but they didn't have a connection to your service platform. They didn't have a connection to your brand. And so we have to beat that 67%. When that was shared with me, I got very concerned that we are a group in Palm Springs known for two things: phenomenal results and terrific service. And while we knew we couldn't get everyone to come back because sometimes they just move out of the area, how would we strengthen the brand? So we did a reflection of companies that deliver exceptional service. You can put in the chat box your favorite companies that you believe deliver exceptional service. Obviously, I'm a raving fan of the Ritz Carlton. Another hotelier, Four Seasons. Companies like Nordstrom might come to mind, or if you enjoy Mercedes-Benz or Tesla, those might come to mind. But put in the chat box a brand that you believe delivers exceptional service. When we look at those brands of delivering exceptional service, we look at what are the core values that they deliver. And we did look at companies that I had worked for previously, like Nordstrom, like Starbucks, like Microsoft, or staying at the Ritz Carlton. I see Four Seasons, Amazon. Robin, you're absolutely right. Those are brands that deliver exceptional service. And what's interesting is it isn't about the price point. It's about the customer experience, which means luxury is not just about the price of the product. It's about how the customer is engaged in the interaction. Now, Keller Williams in 2019, as you know, closed nearly $1 billion a day, every day. 1 billion a day, every day. That's Keller Williams. And in our ladies and gentlemen who sell luxury real estate, for those properties that sold over 1 million, we had $25 billion of real estate sell over 1 million. That's phenomenal results. But we wanted to take that experience, those brands from Amazon, Nordstrom, Ritz Carlton, Four Seasons, and put them into the transaction regardless of the price point. So when you're looking at developing exceptional customer experience, You have to get your hands around what does that mean? And here's what we did. We brought everybody into the room, all of our ladies and gentlemen. At the time we had 8. And we brought them into the room and I said, let's take a look at those company brands that we like best. Well, again, the companies were Nordstrom, the Ritz Carlton, Four Seasons. We did have Tesla. We had specific retail brands like Theory. But what we realized is that those brands all had some commonalities, and we wrote those commonalities on the board. Secondly, we looked at what we did, and more importantly, how we did it, because that's what culture is, what you do and how you do it. And we created some values which we call Aspire. And I'll spell this out. I'll share with you how it shows up, and you're welcome to use it. We realized Aspire, the first letter of Aspire, A, stands for anticipate. Anticipate. When you look at key companies that develop exceptional service, they anticipate what their customer needs and they give it to them before their customer realizes they need it. That is the recipe for the Ritz Carlton. So as you're arriving into a hotel, or you're going into Nordstrom, or you're arriving into your favorite car dealership, or you're arriving to your favorite restaurant, they anticipate you're going to need something. It's probably going to be a table or a menu or a beverage. But anticipatory service, that you mean you're always one step ahead of the customer. So A, anticipate, is a core value for us. Back to Aspire, service. Now, Keller Williams is known for our culture of servant hearts. We're known for showing up and providing that big servant heart. Remember that the organization is designed to do exactly what it's built to do. And when you're delivering exceptional service, the organization does not allow for differentiation or exclusions, meaning everybody at all levels should have exceptional servant hearts going forward. Now, P is perform. That's the third value of Aspire. P is perform. Why? Because we are in a production-based business, which means we have to wake up every day and produce. And if we don't, well, we won't. Now, when you're in production and performance, that means you have a profit. So every day we have what's called the hotel daily lineup. We call it the 3 Gs, where our ladies and gentlemen, our employees, get together on a Zoom call, much like we're doing now. And we go through 3 basic things of what we call the 3 Gs. Number 1, the first G is gratitude. Now, everyone knows the importance of gratitude. We ask our ladies and gentlemen what they're most grateful for. This morning, it was 4 new escrows in 24 hours, 2 contingency removals, 3 closings. But it was also a gratitude of, I spent more time with my daughter, or I called my parents, or my parents called me, or they took me to dinner. What are something that we're really grateful for? That second G is the goal. That gets down to the performance, that performance of Aspire. Why? We have to talk about goals every day. So in our hotel lineup, our morning lineup, we talk about listings taken, listings sold, buyer controlled sales and closings. We talk about that every day. You don't want to have too much of a gap between goal conversations, because if you do, you're maybe not as apt to hit the goal. Now that third G, so you covered gratitude, goals, that third G is the grit. What do we need to cover today? Who needs more attention? What needs more attention? What do we need to focus on today so we can have wins for tomorrow? So we covered anticipate and serve and perform. I is inspire. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been through COVID now. I think it's been almost 8 months. We need some inspiration, right? Now in our group, we believe the inspiration starts with us internally. And then we look to our customers across the table who have hired us. But now is a great time to be focused on inspiration. We all can use more of that. Now, R of Aspire is respond. I know that everyone in this room responds to the customers who need their help. Sometimes, if we're being honest, we may be a little more tired than others, and that's understandable. We've been through a lot. But remember that in this phase, we shouldn't be as focused on falling in love with motivation as we are falling in love with discipline. What that means is you may not feel like going to work. You may not feel like returning those calls or emails, but we have to fall in love with the discipline of doing that, because when you fall in love with the discipline of your schedule, the customer experience is stronger. And that final value, E of Aspire, is exceed. Now, a lot of companies will talk about exceeding the customer expectation, and there's nothing wrong with that. But our E is talking about exceeding our own potential. See, when we're selecting ladies and gentlemen to join our group, we're selecting them based on who they are and what they've done. And more importantly, where they're capable of going next. So that core value of E is talking about helping them exceed their own potential. The competition isn't the other broker, it isn't the other agent. The competition is how good can you be by the time you're done. So those core values of Aspire set the foundation for everything that we do, Irene, to attracting new talent, attracting talent to come into the group, as well as the customers we represent. It also defines how we select marketing programs, how we create customer engagement platforms, how we do things to surprise and delight our customers, which is we're going to get into next. Now, when we opened the conversation, I said that the level of service you offer will directly determine the level of income you make. If you believe that, then I think you'll believe the next story to be entertaining. How many of you on video, by a show of hands, likes to receive a gift? You just love it when someone gives you a gift. I think Chip went straight up. Chip just to have his hand up, right? What we realized is people do like the gifts, but we also realized that the closing gift was sometimes awkward. Now, Toronto has really high sales prices, correct? Right? We do as well. Our average sales price in Palm Springs for our group is $800,000 US. For the market, it's under $500,000. And we will represent a good number of luxury clients every single week. Well, it's a little awkward when you show up at the closing with a bottle of wine worth $100 and they're giving you a commission check of $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. It's that awkward moment of, I probably should give you something, and they're kind of expecting it. Well, what we realized is, wait a minute, what are the companies that deliver exceptional service? Nordstrom, the Ritz Carlton, and how do they do that? Well, here's the trick. They take that awkward closing gift of $100 or $200 or $300, and they divide it into the transaction. So let me explain. It's a math equation. So if we know that in California and maybe in Toronto, we have defining moments in the relationship. You meet the customer meets you. They sign the listing, the buyer signs the buyer-broker agreement. You have the presentation of the photo shoot, the launch of the listing, the presentation of the offer, the acceptance of the offer. In California, the removal of contingencies, the closing, or what we call the fond farewell. Well, what we did by following the Ritz Carlton is we said, let's take that one closing gift and let's sprinkle that money throughout the entire transaction. So what we have now are called 8 defining moments, meaning there are 8 checkpoints in the transaction, or what we refer to as the interaction, where we surprise and delight our customers along the way. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to share with you our playbook. You can simply email me at Brady Sandahl or info. We'll put it in the chat box. And you can simply email, say, hey, my name is Chip. I love gifts. I want the playbook, right? Happy to send the playbook. But this 8 defining step allows you to recognize your customers and surprise them along the way. Let me give an example. One of the defining moments is the photo shoot, right? Now, the photo shoot's not very exciting for you. You've photographed hundreds of properties, but for the seller, this is the first time that their property has been photographed by you. And they want to make sure, ladies and gentlemen, that your photographer is as great as you say they are. So at the end of the photo shoot, we leave for them a bag with tissue and a Ritz Carlton bag with a Ritz Carlton candle and a Ritz Carlton note card. And it says, while we're looking for your buyer, please enjoy the fragrance of the candle. We will find the buyer before the wick burns out. Now, generally, people have a nice reaction. They'll say, that's great. And then they'll call in and say, oh, I love the candle. And our response is always the same. Thank you. We are thrilled you enjoy the candle. Who else do you know who'd like to enjoy the candle as much as you are right now? In other words, who else do you know who'd like to list their property with us? Well, imagine those gifts, those 8 defining moments are sprinkled throughout the transaction. Here's how you and your sales team win. Number 1, your own ladies and gentlemen will have more fun surprising and delighting the customers. Number 2, your customers are going to have a better experience, reducing that 67% number of them not coming back. Number 3, and you'll love this one, more referrals will come into you. In fact, our group is averaging 3 referrals a day. 3. Yes, 3. We're not closing all 3, but we're averaging 3. Why? Because we're purposely delivering exceptional service, following the Ritz Carlton plan of action of surprising and delighting the customers. Everybody wins. Now, over time, you may think that it's going to have an impact on revenue. You're right. It's easier and most cost-effective to find a customer within a current customer than it is to go find a new customer and bring them into the family. So really, as you're going through the transaction, as you're interacting with your customers, be sure that you surprise and delight them along the way. Now, any questions on our 8 defining moments of how we surprise and delight our customers? Most of you are not on video. So if you have a question, either come off onto video or put it in the chat.
Yeah, or put your hand up, put your virtual hand up.
Put your hand up.
I think as maybe people are thinking of some questions, Brady, the important thing to remember is this does not have to be a lot of money. It has to be something that's thought out and just means something to someone. So, especially once you start getting into the upper price points, it is awkward to think of a present because they can get anything for themselves.
Here's a great example. When you are at your best restaurant or your greatest hotel, those ladies and gentlemen, the employees, are looking for the cues and clues of how to surprise and delight their customers. And yes, Jonathan, the playbook is different for buyers than it is for sellers. Similarities, but some differences. Now, when you're in that favorite restaurant or that great hotel and they're looking for the cues and the clues, here's one example. If you've been to Palm Springs, you may know that it can be as high as 125 Fahrenheit in August. That is hot, right? Now, we had 2 sellers and 3 dogs have to leave their property in the middle of August for a showing. We open the door, they're coming out, oh, we're tired, we're hot, we hate this process, is this home ever going to sell? Cue and the clue, they're tired. Called the team member. I said, I need a protein box of protein bars and protein drinks and something for the 3 dogs in the house in 45 minutes. They brought granola bars, protein shakes, and something for the dogs. We left, sellers come back. They are surprised and delighted. That whole package was around $18. Within the next 2 weeks, it generated $35,000 worth of referral income.
Wow.
$17 expense, $35,000 referral income. And they are raving fans. Every time something goes weird where they're like, oh, I think they're moving, we better call Brady. They're calling the bat line to get Brady and the team out there to their neighbor's house. So it doesn't have to be expensive. The key thing is you simply want to be more purposeful on how you are acknowledging your customers. Now, when the customer acknowledges you with a compliment, we're naturally not comfortable receiving a compliment. If I said, Irene, that looks so great on you, she might say, you know, I've had this for years. Versus, thank you. May I recommend the store of where I purchased this from, right? Or may I connect you with my personal stylist who could find something for you just like they found something for me. Now, I'm guaranteeing you, Irene looks a lot better in that than I'm going to pull that off on. But stylist has something for men as well. But the point of that story is that when we're surprising our customers, not with lavish gifts, but with very meaningful gestures, it doesn't need to take a lot of time, and you may not be the person that's doing all of it. There's someone in your sphere that would love to surprise and delight the customers. It doesn't have to cost very much, but the return is big. And if you choose to surprise and delight, even without gifts, be ready for the compliment. Be ready to take the compliment and recognize that's the opportunity to ask, who else do you know who would like to have this level of service that you've had so far? That's the way to grow the business. So if you have one transaction that you're working on right now, one, you can grow that to up to 8, maybe more, by practicing these 8 defining moments, interacting with them 8 times in the contract. Other questions you have around that before we continue?
I think, I just maybe if I could interject also, I know that we do have a number of single agents on here, ones without teams and some even without assistants. So I think, for some, it might be refreshing to know that you don't have to have like this massive organization behind you to do this. And it doesn't have to be anything that's, either expensive or extravagant. You just have to listen. How did you say it? Oh my gosh, meaningful. It has to be meaningful, right? Which is the most important.
Let's assume that you're an individual agent. By the way, I was an individual agent for 12 of my 16 years. I had me, myself, and I, and generally one personality, not 2. But I still practice the defining moments. And here's what I figured out. That when we sell real estate to a seller, it's basically the same boring system over and over again. I mean, yes, they'll say, oh, I have the best home in Toronto and I have a brand new kitchen. And then when you show up, you realize that kitchen was installed in 1985. It is not brand new. Or when you're representing a buyer, you'll think, ugh, in this market, they're going to be up against so many other buyers. This may never happen. But the key thing is recognize that in a normal market with a seller and a buyer, the rhythm of the transaction is always the same, right? It starts with the introduction, then it's the commitment to be in business together, then it's the signing of something, whether it's a listing or a buyer broker agreement, If it's a seller, it's the photo shoot, it's the launch of the listing, it's the presentation of the offer, it's the due diligence or contingency period, and of course the closing, what we call the fond farewell, right? That's the normal rhythm. When you're an individual agent, you don't have to gift them throughout the entire way, but be purposeful on letting them know what's happening next in the transaction. If you simply said there are 8 defining moments and I'm going to focus on 4, find those 4 checkpoints and say this: Melanie, I am so excited to get your home photographed today. Here's what will happen next. We'll get the photos back. We'll write the copy and we'll send you a link as soon as it's on the market. Does that sound good to you? Absolutely. And Melanie, while you're waiting, who else do you know who'd like to have their home photographed at the level that you're having your home photographed today? Not who's going to need to sell, but who else might want to have their home photographed should they decide to put their home on the market? Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to have a home photographed in anticipation that that seller may want to take advantage of the market of the moment. So we're not giving them a gift, but we're being purposeful on checking in with them on one of those checkpoints and giving them that anticipatory service. Now, if you're going to give a gift, think about when the gift should happen, not at the end, not at the end of the transaction. The gift should happen either at the introduction or at the midway point. Why? Because they're most in love with you then. Now, if we're having a dinner, Robin, and we're in Toronto having a great dinner, and they said to me, how's the meal? And you say, this is great. We're most apt to give an accolade in the dinner. But if a week or two goes by and I've gone back to California and Robin's in Toronto and I get some survey on a dinner, I'm like, I don't even know the name of that restaurant. Robin and I had a great conversation, but I don't remember the name of that place. We're no longer engaged. So if you're going to give a gesture, give it to them early in the relationship. Irene, here's what we do in our Defining Moment campaign. Now, the first one is our introduction. We send them what's called a pre-engagement booklet. You might call it a listing package. We just digitally send them a pre-engagement package. It introduces our ladies and gentlemen, who we are and what we do. But our most popular, by far, hands down, is defining moment number 5. We provide chocolate-covered strawberries. This is a whopping $35 gift. And every time it brings in great feedback paired with the referral. Now, that referral may not do business that moment, but it certainly will probably do business down the road. So even if you decide to do one gift and spend $30 to $35 on that client at one time, I strongly encourage you to do it at the front of the transaction, not at the end. Now, you may feel awkward that you didn't give them a closing gift, but remember, they're a little tired. They're tired of the process. They might be a little tired of you. That's okay. And you may be a little tired of them. And that's understood. So surprise and delight them early in the relationship. That will always pay off.
What is defining moment number 5 for you?
Oh, it's the launch of the listing, right? So in other words, when we are launching the listing, we send them a box of chocolate-covered strawberries, congratulating them on the launch of their listing. And that while we're looking for their buyer, they can enjoy a special treat. So it's an anticipatory message. Robin, hand up.
So how do we switch this around for buyers? Because this is very like listing focused.
Sure. So one of our surprise and delights for the buyer is when they have signed a buyer broker agreement, we will send something to them. More importantly, when they have an acceptance of the offer, they receive the chocolate covered strawberries. Now, if the buyer is purchasing something that's not private, meaning they're not leaving their employer, they're not doing something private, we will send it to the office. Why? Because everybody wants to know why they got strawberries at the office.
Yeah.
You might happen to slip a little business cards into the strawberries so that they can hand those out. So that's a great question, Robin. So on the buyers, and we can send you the playbook, it's the launch of the introduction, right? The initial meeting. It's the acceptance of the offer. It's the removal of contingencies, which in the States happens about 17 days after acceptance. And then what we do, that fourth gift, Robin, is an arrival. Now, our arrival gift is very simple. We provide them with a Palm Springs Opoly board game. It's like Monopoly, it's an Opoly. It's just a very simple $20 gift box, which is something that they can enjoy in their new Palm Springs house. If we don't feel that that's something to enjoy, we'll switch that out for something else. But that's the arrival gift. So when they come into their home, like you'd arrive into a hotel room, that's the gift that will be there for them on the kitchen counter. Yeah, good question. So we have playbooks. Not all of them are shared, quite candidly, because one of the playbooks is for agents who refer business to us. And we would not want to tell you how we're going to surprise you, but I will share with you there is a playbook for that. So the playbooks are for sellers, buyers, referral partners, and then we have a fourth category, which is what we call champions, people that are champions of our brand. And so that includes people like security guards at country clubs, because they're the first to know those owners and may say, hey, the Jones are getting ready to sell. You may want to call them, or hey, by the way, this other agent had this buyer. You may want to call this agent because maybe they want to buy one of your listings instead. By the way, that just happened yesterday. The guard knew that the buyer was looking for a house. The guard gave them our phone number. The buyer went and saw our listing, and the buyer bought that listing. So that guard's in our championship playbook, our fourth category.
And it all boils down to relationships.
Yes.
You're building the relationships, not just with your team, not just with your clients, but with other agents and all of those service providers. It never ceases to amaze me how so many people, whether they're realtors or just other professionals, completely ignore the doorman and the security guards and, the chief of staff of rooms and all of those people that really are like, they're the glue that hold those businesses together. And all you have to do is be nice to them.
So there's a question from Mark. Hey, Mark, I didn't realize you were in the room. I love Mark Benson.
He's our Naples guy.
Yeah, I love it. So we use Sherry's Berries. It's a national company, Sherry's Berries, or Cookie by Design. Those are our two vendors that are in the playbook, and they're phenomenal. If you are going to do something like Sherry's Berries or a candle or whatever, here's the thing I'd say. And that is, it is more about the packaging than it is about the product itself.
Yeah.
Is we all know, and Tara Lynn knows where I'm going with this, we know why you love Tiffany's. It's the blue box and the blue bag with the packaging. But Chip, you said you like gifts. I'm sure you're the first to open up at Hanukkah or Christmas. You're going to love to, undo the packaging as well. So don't underestimate the packaging. That's important. Irene, you brought up a good point, and that is probably the closing of the day. And that is, there are 3 markets that you need to learn right now. And this is probably more important from COVID than anything else. Number 1, the Toronto market, or in Mark's case, the Naples market, the market that you specialize in. That is obviously your bread and butter. And you want to spend time conversing and delivering exceptional service in that market. But ladies and gentlemen, there are 2 other markets you want to focus on. The first is called the feeder market, where the buyers are coming from. And the next one is called the downriver, where they're going to next, either themselves or with their money. Let me explain. Is it correct to suggest that maybe people who are living in downtown Toronto in vertical buildings are moving to the suburbs? Right? Yeah, you're all nodding, right? So that's a feeder market. So if you have a beautiful home, a cabin on the lake north of Toronto, your feeder market might be downtown Toronto, right? Or if they're already at the cabin and they want to get to maybe a warmer climate like Kelowna, a drier climate, maybe that downriver market is going to be Kelowna. So remember, the customer is hopefully trained to go to you for market number one, but they may not realize you can help them with feeder markets and downriver markets. So when you're having conversations with your customers and you're showing up with those big Keller Williams servant hearts that you always do, ask them, I'm just curious, Jeff, are you thinking of making any other purchases or sales outside of Toronto? Now, the data suggests that 15% of the time, the customer will say yes. Well, as a matter of fact, we're thinking of moving out of downtown Toronto, or we're thinking of diluting our assets out of Toronto and going to Kelowna. Or we're really thinking that now we want to be closer to our children or grandchildren, or our grandchild's going to college, university, we want to get something for him or her. We have to train them in understanding that you are the go-to person for all things real estate inside and outside of Toronto, or of course the market you specialize in. You're right, Claudia, it's like a good meal. It's not just the food that's on your plate, it is the representation, atmosphere, and how it's served. We call that at the Ritz Carlton scenography. Now, Keller Williams and the Ritz Carlton Leadership Center has an exclusive partnership. It is exclusive. In fact, we'll have a course on this happening next Wednesday and Friday, the 28th and 30th. It's a virtual workshop. I know most of you are busy selling, but this particular virtual workshop is a great chance to learn more about the Ritz Carlton culture, the Ritz Carlton gold standards, and how you can put it into work. But in that relationship, we talk about scenography, and that is, what does a customer see? What does a customer hear? What might customer taste? What might a customer feel? All of those senses in that scene is what we refer to as scenography. So as you're rushing through your day, make sure you're not rushing through that interaction. Make sure that you're using phrases like no versus no problem. You'll use our pleasure, right? One of the gold standards of the Ritz Carlton is the simple 3 steps of service. Step number 1, you state the client's name. Jonathan, it is so great to be of service to you today. In anticipation of you checking out, I have your car clean. It'll be our pleasure to take you to the car. And of course, Jonathan, we welcome you back anytime. Should we book your return reservation now, or would you like to call us at a later date? That's the 3-step of service. It took 20 seconds, but we're using the name, anticipatory service, acknowledging Jonathan, and welcoming him back. So as you're going through those interactions of delivering great service, don't rush through it. Think about the language that you're using and the purposefulness of showing up in that interaction. Questions?
Brady, can I just comment a little bit on the feeder markets and downriver markets? The phrase, are you thinking of buying or selling anything outside of the Toronto market is excellent, because it really does help them understand the scope of our own personal reach. Can you remind me, you mentioned this at one of the events that we were at together, it was the pieces on your Monopoly board.
Oh yeah. So Irene, I'm just curious, what pieces on your Monopoly board are you moving on or moving off? Right. And they kind of laugh, but they're like, what? And I said, well, you've got your virtual Monopoly board. I'm just curious, are you moving some pieces around the board, Toronto to Quebec, or you put something on the board, or do you just want to get rid of that place in Quebec? Like, should we just get rid of that? because I can help you with that. Well, how can you help me? I can position you, connect you with the best agent in that market to help you cash out. So the pieces of the virtual real estate monopoly board is an analogy that people really resonate with right now. Remember, 15% of your customers are doing something outside of the market that you service. They just don't know they should go to you first.
And get out of jail free is like divorce.
Oh, right? Melanie, I think you had your hand up when we were talking about if there's a question.
I was just thinking about the packaging, because obviously over the years of the Ritz Carlton type service, packaging has always been, you know, like you said, the key versus the present itself. But then I look at the sustainability and the world that we're going forward in. If you take a look at what Apple has just done, where they're not packaging the pods and the chargers, and the packaging is sustainable. Do you think about that when you deal with your vendors, or when you're?
Absolutely. We're very sensitive. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, buyers or sellers who are in the Pacific Northwest are very environmentally focused. So we'll be very purposeful on how we package or not package something. For example, we will send that customer a virtual gift card that they can use. There's no mailing, there's no packaging, there's no paper, and they can purchase whatever they want to purchase. It might be a $25 gift card to Amazon. It might be a $75 card to something else, but we're very sensitive to the packaging and the presentation, right? Now in that situation though, Melanie, what we'll focus on is the scripting. You know, we role play our scripting every day during our lineup. We role play that. Why? Because most people are not comfortable receiving a compliment. They shut down. And if we shut down, we're not skilled at asking for future business.
Yeah.
Right? So the packaging isn't the paper and cardboard. The packaging is the presentation of the message. And we role play that every day. Great question. Robin asks, yeah, that's right. Apple's very good. Believe it or not, don't hold this against me. I'm an Android user.
Yay.
I know, Robin's like, I'm the webinar. I've lost, yeah.
Hey, you got my heart even more now, Brady.
Yeah, I think I lost half the group. I mean, cameras are coming off. People are leaving the room. Oh, good. Are there any questions that I can answer to help make sure this was a good use of your time today?
Anybody? I think your playbook for buyers and sellers would be very much appreciated, Brady. But I think it's really important for everybody that's here to make sure that you use those playbooks as a guide. It doesn't help if you just put somebody else's checklist into play for you if you don't put some thought into it and how it applies to our market and to our clients. So, you know, the process in California is quite different. So our defining moments might be different. So just put some thought into it. So when is it that people would like something? For us, we had for a while, we had massage therapists that would do in-house massages. So for a few of our sellers that worked really hard to get their properties to market, as soon as we went live, we would send that massage person in and just give them massages. Of course, that's out the window now, but
well, yeah. And so what I'd say is the first thing is recognize the importance of delivering exceptional service. Just recognize it. That's step number one. Step number two is understand the rhythm of the transaction. The rhythm never changes. It's pretty much in the same order. Number three, if you're going to pay attention to the customers at the level I know you're going to, focus on the front end of that relationship, not on the back end. When you focus on the front end, pay attention, you're training them on how great you are and you're convincing them on what you're doing to help them, right? If you've trained them, you're training them to be raving cheerleaders. It's easier then than trying to go back upstream when something's been on the market for a couple of weeks or it's been a little bumpy. And when there's a problem, remember this, that when there's a challenge, your ability to quickly recover that will strengthen the brand. In other words, if there's a problem and you've handled it correctly, the loyalty that they have to your brand is stronger than if there is no problem at all. So don't run for the problem, get in front of it. Service recovery, it's very powerful. And then for those of you who might be a bit controlling or have big aspirations, and you find that maybe Canada has 4, 5, or 6 defining moments, you don't have to do all of them at one time. Master one. And then when you've mastered one, then you can add a second. But even if you just master one and you did it really, really well, I'm pretty sure you're going to see an increase in unit count, commissions, and possibly fun. And that's what this is about. All right, everyone. I look for your email, Brady at Brady Sandahl. If there's anything we can do, just pour into us. We'll pour into you. For our Keller Williams Associates, thanks for being part of the largest real estate sales force this world has ever seen. To our guests, thank you for pouring into our culture. This is what we do. The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. That's why I'm here. So on behalf of all of our ladies and gentlemen, Keller Williams Luxury, those of us at Brady Sandahl Real Estate Group here in Palm Springs, we wish you a warm greeting. Melanie, stay warm, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Thank you, Brady. Mwah.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.